So I just saw Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Kind of a weird title. The only reason why you'd think they would name it that is because they want to call the third one Beetlejuice Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. Get it? Now, weird titles aside, this movie was not great but not terrible at the same time. The best way to describe this movie would be a mess, and I don't think I'm going to remember it anytime soon. Now, going into this movie, I was actually pretty excited, mainly because I enjoyed the original Beetlejuice. In fact, I have a review on my channel for that if you want to check that out. Now, going into this movie, I was actually pretty excited for a variety of reasons. One of those reasons being that this was a Tim Burton movie that didn't look like an absolute piece of trash. Now, I haven't seen many Tim Burton movies in my life, but on the general consensus that I'm relying on from what I've heard is that it seems like in his later career he went a little style over substance. I've seen about half of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, so I understand what people are talking about, but watching the trailer for this movie, it feels like it sort of returned to his roots and that his style was going to be a little bit more classic Tim Burton. Not to mention most of the cast members were returning for the second one, and when I saw Jenna Ortega was going to be playing the daughter, I thought that was a good choice. She worked with Tim Burton on the Wednesday show, which I have not seen, but I think they work well together. But after watching this movie, there are just so many issues, and when compared to the original movie, this one feels just greatly uninspired. For starters, as a comedy movie, the comedy wasn't really all that funny. Now sure, there were parts near the end of the movie where I found myself chuckling a little bit, mainly because that's where Michael Keaton was allowed to shine. But there were just so many jokes throughout this movie that were so poorly communicated, and you could see the punchline coming a mile away. It just felt really stale after a while. Also, Justin Theroux's character in this movie is just so incredibly annoying. I never found him funny once, and he was just super irritating throughout, and he takes up quite a lot of the film. Now, as I said earlier, I was excited to see Jenna Ortega in this movie, and I thought that would be a good choice for her character. But after watching this movie, it just felt like she had so little to work with, and it just feels like a much lesser version than the daughter in the original movie. Not to mention there's a forced love interest between her and some guy. These two actors have absolutely no chemistry together, and this movie is really insistent that they like each other, even though it's not believable for a single second. Another issue that this movie has is the story and the way that it was structured. There are several characters in this movie that just feels like they're completely thrown in and don't really have much to do with the entire movie, especially Monica Bellucci's character and William Dafoe's. These two characters are both introduced around the beginning of the movie and then disappear for the vast majority of it and only really come back near the end. It was just a very odd choice, especially when the trailer presented as if Monica Bellucci's character would have much more to do in this movie. Now, in terms of the Tim Burton style in this movie, it was fairly well done for the most part, and it felt like great going back to his roots. But there were a few parts where this movie kind of shifted into different art styles. There was a stop motion animation style throughout this movie, and there was also a kind of Russian black and white film presented in this movie for a certain scene. And the issue with these is just that they don't feel like they really mesh well together in this type of movie and come out of nowhere. It just felt like they didn't really fit well, and they could have easily been changed with almost anything else. Now, in terms of story and emotional beats, this movie felt very unsatisfying. Now, the original movie had a certain charm when it came to its story and emotional beats that worked well for that movie, but this movie is just really missing a lot of heart when it comes to those. Not to mention that a couple of scenes in this movie seem really forced and it just does not feel like it's being conveyed well at all. And there are some story elements in this movie that feel almost recycled from the first movie. And come to think about it, there were a couple of jokes in this movie that I felt were reused from the first movie. So overall, this movie is not terrible, but there really just so much wasted opportunity in this one. I guess I'll give this one a 5 out of 10. Not terrible, and definitely check out the original if you haven't seen it already. And if you like the original, I guess we recommend this one. So there it is, 5 out of 10.